prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. This call is from
Jason Hurst.
an inmate at Central Prison. This call will be monitored and recorded. For customer assistance, collection, or complaint procedures, or to block future calls, dial 1-866-230-7761. To accept this call, press 5 now. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
It wasn't until I was in the back of a sheriff's car being driven to Central Prison that I began to wonder what living on death row must be like. I'd heard that the prisoners there weren't locked down and were therefore able to spend several hours a day around one another. I remember thinking that everyone on death row was convicted of killing at least one person, so surely it must be an extremely violent place to exist in, and my mind began to conjure images of bloodthirsty monsters and super predators. Never mind that I'd been sentenced to death only hours before. I didn't view myself like that. With these thoughts in mind, the 2-hour drive was over way too fast, and I was soon herded into a holding cell where 2 guards ordered me to remove all my clothes, squat, cough, lift my privates, and show the soles of my feet. The meager possessions I brought from the jail, such as toothpaste, shampoo, deodorant, and shower shoes, were tossed in a box, and I was given a choice to either throw them away or mail them home. My new possessions were a pair of socks, boxers, an oversized red jumpsuit, and knockoff Converse All-Stars. There was no orientation, no, hey, this is what you should expect in your future. None of that. I was escorted down a dark tunnel and into Unit 3, death row. After being handed off to a single guard, we made our way to a cell block of 24 cells. The lights were dim and everyone was locked down for the night. It was deathly silent. And after the guard told me what time the doors opened and I would get my bedroll and sets of clothing the next day, I remember the cell door closing behind me and being exhausted, I quickly fell asleep. After 2 weeks of trial, this has a mental drain on me. I remember in the morning, I woke to the cell doors banging open, and I jumped up mad at myself for not being up earlier and prepared for what was sure to come. I expected violence. I decided I would stand in the doorway so I could observe everything and everyone and make myself seen, show that I wasn't afraid, though I was. Guys were moving around preparing to go to breakfast. Some of them would glance my way, and I noticed they all looked normal. Nothing like the images I conjured on the ride here. Finally, I was approached by a guy introducing himself as Terrance Campbell. He pointed out a couple others by name who in turn nodded their heads my way, as if to acknowledge me. Terrance asked if I smoked and drank coffee. When I told him yeah, he went to his cell and returned with some coffee and tobacco and a radio. He explained that I would need the radio to listen to the television, and that it was mine if I wanted it. Now in prison, especially when you're new, you don't normally just accept gifts from people, but me not having anything and would have had to wait weeks to get anything, to get money and to purchase things, I went ahead and accepted them. And throughout the rest of that day, most guys on the block dropped by to introduce themselves. They'd bring coffee and snacks and words of encouragement. A few of them explained the appeals process and ensured that I would be appointed a lawyer in a month or so. Those acts of kindness sure made my interest in death row easier than I expected. And over the years, each time new people arrived on the road, those actions would be repeated. But there are many other ways that people here help each other on a daily basis, such as, for instance, like due to the nature of where we live, many of us suffer through bouts of depression. Sometimes it's seasonal, and often it's just brought on by the loss of a loved one in society, especially as we're getting older. But fortunately for us, there are a few men amongst us, such as Paul Brown, who are psychologists in every sense of the word except having a diploma. These guys will put their lives on hold while we talk for hours about whatever's causing us grief and worry. Oftentimes, after a smile and a few wise words, their patients are able to walk away feeling unburdened, knowing they're welcome to return whenever they feel the need to talk. Over the years, many of us have had knee or back surgeries, due to our age and walking on concrete and sweeping on steel. And we can't manage the stairs until we're done recovering the healing process. The prison staff won't assist us, so it's guys like Darrell Maness who helps move those recovering, the guys who are recovering to like lower cells. He pushes them in wheelchairs and helps them navigate their daily lives. There are guys who write letters for the illiterate, guys who help a blind fellow here, guys who read books to those fellows, men who give portions of whatever money they receive from home to a local battered women's shelter, donate to their mosques and churches. In 2016, my friend Celine had his colon removed due to a cancer diagnosis. The result was he was left with a colostomy bag. Due to his deteriorating mental health, paralysis in one leg, and severe eczema, he couldn't adequately take care of himself and was forced to live in the road, on death row, as opposed to them allowing him to stay in the prison hospital. The dry and bleeding skin caused by his eczema prevented the adhesive from securing the colostomy bag to his stomach. And the medical staff would refuse to give him more than his 5-bag-a-day limit. So Wally Thomas, Jimmie Lawrence, Ricky Gagle, and myself would take shifts cleaning his cell and soiled clothing, bathing him from the sink and constantly advocating for medical to provide him adequate health care, an advocacy that always fell on deaf ears. At times, he would be forced to go days without a colostomy bag, and we would take turns sitting by his bed to keep him company and catch the feces as it oozed from the protruding intestine in his stomach. Oftentimes, tears of shame and despair rolled down his cheeks, while tears of frustration and anger rolled down ours. We couldn't understand how the prison staff could be so apathetic toward the situation, and us, men who were condemned and deemed to be the worst of the worst, his only source of help. After years of suffering, my friend Celine died on April 17th of this year. On a lighter note, every year several geese land in the prison recreation yard to build their nests. And while we complain about the goose poop scattered over the basketball court and pretty much everywhere else, most of us look forward to seeing the little babies waddle around behind their parents. We've been threatened by the administration with disciplinary action and a $10 fine if we're caught feeding or watering them. But the babies can't fly out of the enclosed yard once they're born here. They can't get water or food. And in the past, a guard was observed stomping on the eggs in one of the nests. So we feel a kinship with them, brothers in the struggle and all that. So we smuggle them bread and sneak them water, just trying to provide them with what every living creature deserves, a little compassion. These examples are just a tiny fraction of the good carried out by the men on North Carolina death row. Acts of kindness and humanity that they're not paid for, not even a pat on the back. They do it because it's what's in them to do. These men who've been deemed unfit, not just for society, but for life itself. Unfortunately, we are continually judged by the worst things we've done, often decades ago. And we are all more than that. We are not who we were. I challenge all listeners to do as Brian Stevenson said and, quote, get proximate. Get to know somebody on death row, and it may be that your hearts and minds will be changed. That's all, Ms. Valerie.